Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished entrepreneur and respected designer from Bangalore and Ahmedabad, Nisha Vikram. Nisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Nisha is the founder and promoter of CraftCanvas, which is a design studio that collaborates with over 30 craft clusters across India to create large-scale installations for luxury brands, government institutions, and cultural spaces. Canvas has recently won the Baby Blue Elephant Award at the Curious Design Awards for 2025 for the Spatial Installation category. So, Nisha, let's start with the first question. Tell me about your journey from engineering and the corporate world to founding CraftCanvas. What was the turning point that made you decide to dedicate your life to Indian crafts?
So, Ashutosh, I'm delighted to be on the show, of course. So, to answer your question, I am from Chennai. So, as it is with us, the natural progression is we do our we do our medicine or our engineering, and then go on to do our higher studies, and then we work. So that's really the trajectory that we all follow. And I did the same as well. I did my engineering, and then I went on to do my MBA, and I was in the corporate sector for a few years. But I was on the fast track. The job was playing very, very well, and over time, I was climbing up the corporate ladder. I could really see how, the chart was it was perfectly charted out for me, the entire career path. But what happened at that time was I wasn't very happy. I wouldn't wake up very excited to go do my job. Initially, it was a lot of fun, I should admit that. But later on, I had this little bit of numbness. There was not a lot of excitement. Somewhere I could sense this is not my path. The turning point came when I met a couple of graduates from NID. So they were working with crafts and they needed some supply chain inputs. So I was connected to them by a common friend. And then while I was talking to them, it hit me that what a different world that is. It gave me a completely new perspective. See, I'm a city girl. I was born and raised in Chennai. I had no idea of what a village even looks like. So the terms like crafts, handmade, rural economy, none of that made any sense to me till that point. I was so fascinated that I was completely hooked. But what helped was by the time the organization I worked for, I was at a stage where I could take a year sabbatical. Everyone, including me and my boss and everyone around me, were very sure that I would go back. And now it's been 15 years. So that bit was the turning point for me. And now, the occasional accounting does bore me. But other than that, wake up every day and I'm ready to go.
Fascinating. And what is the story behind the name CraftCanvas?
See, I'm an engineer. Right? And I'm not a designer by education. So for me, when I looked at crafts, so I think that also helped me to gain a perspective that was very different from what a typical design school education could have been. I'm speculating here, of course. So I could see a lot of untapped potential. But what the artisans were doing is the same thing that they were doing across generations. And probably that's what they were doing it because the market expected them to do so. But I could see that craft was not just a product, it was a design vocabulary. It's a way of life. So it can be on ceilings, on walls, on furniture, and even on storytelling formats like logo design or packaging design. Crafts really have that kind of potential. So the name CraftCanvas comes from that. That any canvas, literal or metaphorical, can hold craft.
Right.
So that is how the name came about. Definitely. And that's what we hope to do justice to.
Amazing. And how do you define the relationship between design, identity, and craft?
See, design is the bridge that is a crux of our work. So craft, like I mentioned earlier, it's a way of life. It's an entirely its own language. So when I translate that craft into a new identity, I use design as the bridge. And because craft is not a very static thing and it is something that can move and evolve,
Mm-hmm.
I can say that it has the potential to become a completely new identity as well.
Mm.
But our job in the whole process is to make sure that we don't dilute their essence.
Mm-hmm.
So we want someone to look at our work and say, yes, oh my God, this is this craft. This is chicken curry, but I never imagined chicken curry like this. This is
Mm.
miniature painting that I never imagined miniature painting like this.
Mm.
So we want to create that sort of a new identity for craft without diluting its essence, without
Mm.
killing its soul.
Very interesting.
So that's what we do.
Very interesting. But you also started to connect the diverse craft clusters of India and also reposition craft as a strategy rather than not just a heritage.
Yeah.
Tell me about these initiatives.
Uh, See, when you look at craft as a heritage, okay, you're already saying it is something from the past.
Correct.
You're relegating it uh, to probably your ancestors, and what you're trying to say in this process is that it has no role for you in your current life,
Mm.
and definitely no way of shaping the future.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at it like that, it's very static. It has no way of moving or evolving.
Mm.
But you see, craft is really a living organism. It's
Correct.
got a potential to adapt, to
Yeah.
evolve.
Mm.
Yeah, it's also, you have to look at craft as a solution to design problems.
Mm.
When you look at it like that, we feel that that whole, the perspective shift in heritage versus strategy is this. You look at craft as a problem solver in design.
Mm.
And I feel that it also helps the craftspeople, because otherwise, when you're only looking at them as keepers of heritage, there are these government schemes and a lot of NGOs, and sometimes when we began, even us, we looked at them only as benefactors.
Mm.
So we are the saviors, and craft is only the raw material, and
Mm.
then we tend to look at in a very patronizing aspect.
Right.
Yeah, but when you shift it as a strategy, we look at them as collaborators in our work.
Mm. It was also very fascinating that you refer to artisans as co-creators and not
Yes.
just producers. I've often spoken to many people in the same world, and they say we give the design and they produce it for us. But it was very refreshing to see you referring to them as co-creators. Tell me more.
See, I learned this the hard way.
Hmm.
So this is back in sometime in 2012 or 13.
Hmm.
So we were working on a very big mural. I think it was about uh, 25 feet by 10 feet. I think roughly that was the size of the mural of a Mathani Pacheri mural for the Chief Minister's office in
Hmm.
Gandhinagar.
Hmm.
So, see, typically Mathani Pacheri as a craft,
Hmm.
through generations of wisdom, they've come to the point where they say that craft is something that when you do Mathani Pacheri,
Hmm.
it's very intricate. They don't
Hmm.
leave large patches of color
Right.
because they do it by hand. So it's not possible for them to get a very even color in like large areas. But because the project called, for a mural that was going to be very high up, the
Hmm.
client and I decided, only the client and I, we decided that the whole artwork had to have a lot of these negative spaces. I mentioned this to the artisan, and the artisan said, "Madam, ये work नहीं करेगा." He said, "This
Hmm.
will not work for us."
Hmm.
But I pushed him. I said, "No, we have to do this." And then he eventually he made it, and the output was a complete disaster.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah. So patches everywhere, and yeah, it was something that we really could not have put up.
Hmm.
And then I went to the artisan, because who else knows how to do this, right? I went to the artisan, and then the artisan sat with me, and then we figured out how to solve this problem.
Hmm.
And then he helped us solve it.
Hmm.
So that is when I learned that if the artisans are not with you from the very beginning,
Hmm.
there is no point in a design that the artisans
Yeah.
cannot make.
Yeah. What an
And
amazing perspective. Yeah.
yeah. So, and I feel like, if I were to ignore generations of this embodied wisdom, it is
Hmm.
at my own peril.
Correct.
And also the relationship, right?
Okay.
And what is craft if not a relationship?
Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you. Nisha, in what ways do you think Indian crafts can contribute to cultural diplomacy and global branding?
Ashutosh, I see craft when somebody comes to India, somebody from abroad comes to India,
Mm,
their first stop is to a Fab India, right? What do they take back as a souvenir? They
mm,
take back something that's made by hand.
mm.
Yeah, because our crafts speak that language that is
Correct.
universal. Everybody understands that language of craft.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, I myself, I am from a colonial system of education, and so are a lot of us. So
mm,
we always, we are used to looking at the West for inspiration for a very long time.
mm.
So we've read Western books. Our sense of aesthetics is very Western. So somewhere along the way, we have forgotten what it is, to actually have crafts in our life, and we've
Mm.
forgotten the old stories. So
Right.
I feel craft has that potential. It's a potent tool for us to remember that.
Mm,
And in a sense, I feel India has arrived. We no longer have to mold ourselves, to Western expectations, or, we can totally hold our own. And I feel
correct.
soft crafts has the soft power of doing this for us.
Mm. Amazing, amazing. I was also fascinated to read when I was preparing for my conversation that you were involved in designing for the Prime Minister's office and as the Museum of Meenakari Heritage. Tell me about both these experiences and what did you design?
Uh, so, see, for us, every project, I mean, it's kind of follows the same set of process.
Yeah.
So whether it's a high profile project, or a small one in like, in a residence, so the process is fairly the same for us.
Hmm.
It's like saying that you have a favorite child.
Correct.
Even if a parent has a favorite child, they're not allowed to say that they have a favorite
Absolutely
child.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely right.
So the experience, of course, is very it was very nice of doing this, the scale of it, the visibility of this. But having said that, we have a four-step process, which is we start with design, which is my most favorite part, because at that point in time, the potential is endless.
Hmm.
Anything can come out of that project at that point in time. So
Hmm.
we research, we read books, we work with the artisans. What can we do? So we do,
Hmm.
that is the process that we do.
Hmm.
Design is the next stage where we work with the artisans, we create blueprints. So that is kind of the crux of how the output will come out. So there
Hmm.
is a lot of back and forth with the artisans, because there is no point in designing something that the artisans cannot make
Hmm.
or make in that stipulated time.
Right.
We work a lot, under very strict timelines. So we
Correct.
need to be able to fulfill that.
Hmm.
So that is there. The third step is production. There is not a lot of back and forth, but this is the time towards the end of it. There is a lot of clashes with all teams, because everything has to come together,
Hmm.
and there is a timeline crunch. So that's the time. And
Hmm.
then the installation happens, where we're all there on site to install
Hmm.
it. See,
Hmm.
there are a lot of stories if I were to like pick up a single project. So
I understand. I
yeah.
understand. But one more thing I wanted to ask you was that you also had a collaboration with this brand Hermes, you
Yeah.
know. How did you balance traditional craftsmanship with expectations of very high-end luxury brands?
Uh, See, when the Hermes project came to us, it was a big milestone,
Hmm.
obviously, because of not what the brand is,
Hmm.
but what it even represents. See,
Right.
because suddenly we get a chance to quite literally put craft at the center of a global luxury space.
Correct.
And
Correct.
it's not every day we get to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we contacted the architects of Hermes, when we had the conversation, so their brief was very clear. So they wanted something that was a textile installation, but that's tactile, and it also had to blend with their design language. So if
Hmm.
you look at it, the color of the artwork, if you've seen the pictures, the color is the Hermes orange. So it
Hmm.
kind of goes
Yeah.
with their visual language, and their brief was very poetic. So the brief was they wanted to recreate the dappled shadows on a tree-lined street in an
Hmm.
abstract way for this.
Wow.
Yeah. So then we went back. I mean, like I mentioned, we have this four-step process. So we worked with the artisans. We had to understand what was possible, because we only had 6 months to also deliver.
Hmm.
So we had that, and we put everything together. And about 60 artisans worked on this day and night. I mean, we have, because see, the fabric is very different from what a typical chicken curry fabric is.
Right.
And a chicken curry typically is very symmetrical. So if you make a flower here, there's another flower here. But this is not like that at all. So it took the artisans a little bit of time to adjust to the whole thing, but the result was fabulous. But the credit where I would give to the Hermes team, to their architect team, and the support team, is that they were very respectful of the work. See, we, I think, grow up in the midst of all this beauty, and we're completely immune to its charm. But
Correct.
when you look at it from the perspective of an outsider, this is magic for them. So they were very supportive throughout the whole process. So the artisans initially were not very sure how this would work. So when they finally saw the output, they were completely thrilled about it. So yeah, it was tiring work. And when the last shipment went out, we all ordered biryani and we ate it. And the artisan said, "Agli baar na aur acha karenge." And then it was on to the next project for us.
Amazing. How amazing. Can you tell me about an example of a craft technique that you helped bring into a modern context?
See, this is what we do. This is the core of our work.
Right.
Translating traditional craft into something contemporary.
Right.
So, we have done gond on ceramic. So this is we made a lot of these various things, but one mural still stands at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. And then you saw how at Hermes we translated chicken curry, which is on a delicate fabric, to something that's an installation. And we've done that for Sanji, and we've done that for the Museum of Meenakari Heritage, if you recollect. I mean, we were just discussing. So we translated miniature into 5 single point perspectives. But at no given point in time could you look at the craft and not identify the craft.
Right.
That is the crux. We cannot dilute that craft at all.
Well said. Well said. Amazing. Moving on, Nisha, how does CraftCanvas sustain itself financially while working with artisans and doing cultural projects?
We are sort of fortunate to have a steady pipeline of work. See, our work lasts anywhere between 6 months to a year, every project of ours. So in a way, we work across multiple teams. It's very layered, it's immersive, it's high on research and development. So that kind of, so we can estimate what is, the pipe. So we can kind of estimate our finances in a long-term way. And also, we are not for high volume at all. We are not a mass brand. We only take up very few high impact projects, just only because of the nature of the work that we do. I cannot be working on multiple projects over this period of time. We won't be able to do justice to it. And having said that, we are very particular about having an ethical model, which is also financially sustainable. And before we quote for any of our clients, our artisans are also involved in this process. We really need to understand what time it would take, how much do they think, and we do give a lot of room for error, because our work is such that it is all custom made, so it's very difficult for us to exactly know. So we do give that breathing space for our work. And apart from this, though not financially, it doesn't put a big dent in my work. I mean, I do teach at CEPT and a few other institutions. What it helps is it helps us get people to work with. So we work with a lot of new young designers, collaborators, researchers. It keeps our studio very fresh and dynamic. It helps. And finally, it's important for us to reinvest in our work quite a bit.
Correct.
We travel a lot. At any given point in time, some artisan is working on something new in the hope that someday when a project calls, we'll be able to incorporate that into it. We document our work, we archive our work. I write about a lot of what we do. I mean, I write for newspapers. So this kind of keeps the whole thing going.
Amazing. How have you seen your work impact artisan communities, particularly women?
I like to stay away from these claims of impact.
Okay.
Yeah. Because number one, I don't think Craft Canvas is big enough to, transform communities,
Mm,
or anyone's life. And number two, I don't, I don't like this term, phrase, we provide livelihoods. Because what it says is it says that the designer is the innovator and
mm,
craft is just a raw material. So this
mm,
whole patronizing savior complex term of it, I do not like. In
mm,
fact, I recently wrote an article for Deccan Herald on exactly the same topic,
mm.
on why, this attitude has to end.
Correct.
Having said that, financial independence for women is very important,
Mm-hmm.
because even when women earn even a modest regular income, the
Mm.
way the family looks at it, the way their
Correct.
children look at them,
Yeah.
and how the community benefit, it's really, it changes in a big way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I feel that while I don't want to make a grand claim on impact, I feel if you're part of this larger ripple and help women not just use their skill, to keep heritage, but to actually make a difference in their own lives,
Mm.
I would be happy that this has happened through Craft
Fascinating.
Canvas.
Wonderful. I have time for two more questions for you, Nisha.
Yeah.
Who are some artists, thinkers, or designers that you personally admire?
So there are several. Our work is to do with a lot of research. So every day we are coming up with new people, who kind of wow us. Top of my mind, there is an artist called Nansuk of Guler.
Mm-hmm.
So he's from the 18th century. He's a Pahadi miniature artisan.
Mm.
So for his time, I we feel that his work was well ahead of his time, of its
Mm.
time.
Mm.
So in fact, even today for the Museum of Meenakari Heritage,
Mm.
we referenced a lot of his work.
Wow. Mm.
Yeah, so it is that relevant, all these
Mm.
centuries later.
Mm.
And then there is MP and Aditi Ranjan,
Mm-hmm.
who wrote this book, Handmade in India, which is
Mm-hmm.
sort of a Bible for us.
Mm-hmm.
See, when we started off Craft Canvas, to
Mm.
reach out to artisan villages, you have to understand it's 2010.
Yeah.
No WhatsApp, no Instagram, Google Maps would not work properly.
Mm.
Artisan villages did not even have a signal,
Yeah.
mobile signal.
Yeah.
So it was handmade in India, which
Mm.
helped us get in, give us a lens for the depth and geography of the
Mm.
craft in our country, and
Mm.
helped us get to where the artisans were.
Mm.
So that is there. And then our clients, I work with several clients. One of them I would be Studio Lotus. They always push us to think out of the box.
Mm.
So it helps us in our uh,
Mm.
work as well.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And my last question for you, Nisha, what are your thoughts on the future of craft-based enterprises in India, and what is the legacy you hope to leave for Craft Canvas?
Uh, See, the future of craft enterprises, I would say that fashion, if you look at it in craft, they
Mm.
have paved the way beautifully for us.
Mm.
So fashion, in my area of work, which is spatial and architecture, I feel that we are still in a bit of a Western hangover. Of course,
Mm.
times are changing, but fashion has really, there are so many designers who work with the crafts.
Mm.
So fashion has taken it so far ahead that we can really follow in its footsteps and
Mm.
get there. But I can really say that times are changing. And in terms of legacy, there is a world that I always dream of. It's where a designer who studies design in India is
Mm.
fluent in the language of craft.
Mhm.
Yeah. And where the artisans are actually at the center of this whole thing and not just at the periphery. We
Mm.
have artisans who are teachers, artisans who are learners. And in future, this whole concept of an artisan designer should not be an exception. That should be the norm.
Mm.
Uh, if you're able to plant a seed in that direction, even in a very tiny bit, I think that would be a job
Mm.
done from my end.
Yeah,
And I hope to live long enough to see this happen in my lifetime.
absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. But on that note, Nisha, I just want to say what an amazing conversation this has been. I mean, my wife and I do believe that we collect a lot of craft, not just from India, from all over the world in our home. But you've given me a very different perspective today on how to appreciate craft, how to understand the kind of depth that exists with the creators of all this craft. I just want to say thank you for the incredible work that you're doing for Indian craft, for Indian artists, and for our country in general. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.